Hello? Hi? Hello, John Paul.
Hello, Abdullah. Is this being recorded for posterity and in a public space?
Uh, I don't know. I don't think it's a public space. Because I specifically invited a couple of folks, you and the guys. Anyways, this is more like a
Yeah, what's the difference between this and what we normally do?
well, this has been recorded onto YouTube. YouTube. Ah.
Hmm.
Okay, okay. John Paul. So basically, this is recorded as we speak, and it will be posted on YouTube. But I believe right now that not anyone in the world can watch it. They have to be invited first. So it's like a closed hangout thing.
Hmm.
Okay. Let me see
Okay.
what's going on with Fantastic and everything, you guys. So how did you get the invite? By email or
No, it popped up in Hangouts.
hangouts? So again, this has nothing to do with Slack or LoboLabs. Hold on. Let me just. I, I sent the invite to and Dimitri. Is Dimitri online? Let's see now. Paul, are you still there? Hmm. Can someone request him? Control. Dimitri.
Okay, I'll unmute for a little while.
Okay. I'm sending them the invite again.
Okay, you can hear me, right?
Yes, yes.
Good. Apa macam apa?
The invite. Okay, here's Muhammad. And now we only have Muhammad. Are you there? Can you hear us?
Hello, Scaffy.
Muhammad, can you see something? I'm guessing it's a mic problem.
Hello.
Hey, Muhammad, what's going on, man?
Good, good.
Okay, fantastic. We're all here, but you waiting for you. Okay, maybe it's a good idea if you guys mute or turn off the Slack notifications so that every time I send something a Slack, you don't get that pop-up thing. Okay. So, okay, he's trying to join. So, Muhammad, just so that you're aware, this video is currently being recorded and it's broadcast live on YouTube to those I believe who are invited only. I don't think it's open to the whole world. But that being said, I haven't tested this sufficiently to verify that. So let's just keep that in mind, right? Let's not talk about payment issues and stuff. Don't give around like bank accounts and PIN codes and stuff. Okay. So okay, fantastic. Dimitri's trying to join us right now. Okay, so basically this Google Hangouts on there, like I said, it's supposed to be live. I discussed this with CISO, and he asked us that we do this privately, and to record it, he'll view it later on to see what kind of stuff we talk about, and if it can be eventually either broadcast live, at least shared to the public on YouTube, right? So that's the idea here, and that could probably require some effort from our part to balance between being able to discuss issues that we care about, but at the same time not giving out too much information about the project we're working on and stuff, because that's supposed to be undercover kind of thing, right? So, for example, let's rehearse this until Dimitri comes on. So, for the agenda, we have a channel now on Slack called Brown Bags, if you guys can see it. You guys see it?
Oh, it's,
Hey, Dimitri, how's it going, man?
oh, it's okay.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to say this again, guys. Today's brown bag I don't think it's going to be as full-fledged as a normal brown bag might be, and that's for several reasons. Just first of all, because it's the first time we're doing this, we're kind of practicing. Also, because we haven't fully sorted out the legal aspect of this session, meaning are we allowed to broadcast this to the whole world or not? Are we allowed to broadcast it live or not? That will depend on this. Part of it will depend on what we talk about this session, right? So just to give a disclaimer, I asked CISO's permission to broadcast this live, or at least have it posted publicly on YouTube for the world to see, and he said, let's let him view this after we're done, go over it, and see if he thinks that's a good idea or not, right? But in order to help him approve, or at least encourage him to approve, we should try to kind of make our discussions balance between the need to make it specific to our needs, but at the same time not give out too much information that's relevant to CISO's project, the project that we're doing for him, right? Also, I created a channel called LoboLabs Brown Bags on Slack. I'll post it on the LoboLabs. You guys see it, right? On the LoboLabs team channel. So basically, here, any discussions we have during the brown bag, we should have it here. And I also, like, if there's an agenda today, it's my turn, so I kind of put a very simple agenda. So next time, let's say it's John Paul's turn, then I expect that John Paul, you put the time, eventually the link. Yeah, speaking of the link, okay. So if you guys, I don't know, if you guys want to see yourselves on YouTube, here's a link. This is the event page. So this is, so I'm just adding, and this is to embed the video, I guess. So this is, all this information is here. So that's the responsibility of the moderator of the brown bag whenever it happens, right? So, you know, we put all the technical information, the date, the calendar, and the agenda. So the agenda for today, okay, let's start, guys. The agenda for today is how to improve debugging and QA by more effective use of logging, and maybe Git if we have time to discuss that, right? So let's. Usually, I like to use an actual example to focus the discussion. So let's talk about the problem we had today, Jean Paul, the whole refactor commit, right? And for the people listening to this conversation, and to talk about this refactor and kind of and within the limits that we're allowed to talk about. Basically, the team, we had two members in our team, Kathy and Jean Paul. They worked on a major refactor in our project. Our project extensively relies on networking. And so suppose we have a couple of phones communicating with one another, and we use a certain way of communicating through the network, a certain architecture. And Jean Paul and Mohammed, they basically work together to kind of refactor that out, make it more modular, and then they eventually push their change onto the main branch. But before they did, there was an issue. Currently, we use code reviews using GitHub's pull request system, and so we have engineers code review the work of other engineers, and that includes testing the functionality, just basically having a quick smoke test, making sure that the repro steps that were specified by the author are actually met and executed properly. And once that's done, they should go over and look at the code itself and make sure that it meets best practices and so on. So in this case, John Paul sent the code review to myself, and I tested it, and it turned out that it was failing basic use cases for our app. So we're talking about very basic happy paths were not being fulfilled. To make it even more complicated, if I simply switched back, if I revert the change, the same happy path worked reliably. So I was fairly certain that it was this change that introduced those regression bugs, right? Now the problem was I asked every other member of the team, Dimitri and Hamad, to do the exact same test, and they all passed. And so we had this issue where, okay, Jean Paul and Hamad were working on this for like a week or two, and they were having this branch with like many commits, like 20, 30 commits. And there was an issue of, so what do we do? Should we keep on testing and testing and testing until everyone is 100% satisfied, including myself, or should we just push it into master and then file a bug for that one issue? That's exactly what Jean Paul suggested, right? We eventually did that. We pushed this change onto master, even though it didn't meet my needs, and I was very uncomfortable last night. I had trouble sleeping because I'm like, we're having something in master, and it's not working for me. It's pretty much blocking me. It's breaking my happy paths and so on. This morning, Jean Paul started working on it, and initially, Jean Paul, we were guessing, right? We were saying, so what's the problem? Could it be because of using Facebook as a login credential, using email? Could it be because the Wi-Fi connection is not reliable? Is it because we just didn't know, right? And eventually, Jean Paul sat down and he did his own debugging. We can give you the mic in a sec, Jean Paul, to discuss that. But also in my case, what I did was I went into the branch that Jean Paul and Mohammed worked on, the refactor branch, and I started going and doing kind of a manual way of doing git bisect, So I was doing like a binary search, right? Like let's say there was 10 commits, so I went at the very beginning. I reverted back to that commit, and I just to make sure that that happy path is working. It did, right? And I went back to the last commit. It didn't work, so I went in the middle, and so on. So I was kind of doing like a binary search onto which branch actually caused the problem, right? And you guys can actually see a log of this in the issue link. So Jean-Paul, which issue is this? I know this is not going to be useful to the other viewers, but this is just for the reference for our team. For the code review, we're talking about issue 44.
Issue 42. Number 42.
42? Okay. So issue 42. Okay, so here. So you guys can see that I actually put a log of this right here. Actually, I'll just put it on the brown bag, sorry. So this is where I posted basically. I was going through like each commit, and so I put the commit hexadecimal thing, and I put the description and who made the commit, and I put a quick result of what happened during that commit. Now some of these commits just couldn't even compile. Some of them, immediately blew up as soon as they compiled and ran. And so okay, so let's take a step back. This whole thing was a long, big introduction. So let's look back at the title of this brown bag. Basically, how to prove debugging in QA by more effective use of logging and Git, right? So this is more about Git, right? So guys, this is one takeaway, and we can discuss that later. But basically, one takeaway is every Git commit has to stand on its own. It cannot be a work in progress. It cannot be, oh well, I just wrote the code, and this is kind of a mental milestone, so I'm just going to commit this to keep it out of the way, and then let me see if it works. That's not acceptable with Git, because it could work if you're doing things locally, then eventually you squash that later on. But as soon as it goes out to the World Wide Web, every engineer is responsible for ensuring that every Git commit can be taken in isolation and looked at as a snapshot and a continuum of your development, right? So, and this is the perfect example, right? Because now I'm trying to do a Git bisect, or at least a manual Git bisect, right? And if I go to a certain commit and it just doesn't work, then it just really it just ruins the whole process of a binary search within Git. So that's once I saw it, I'm like, no, Jean-Paul, I'm throwing the towel on this. I can't. This exercise is useless, right? So this is one takeaway. Okay. So going back now, back to Jean-Paul. We talked about using Lumberjack as a we talked using Lumberjack as an Objective-C login framework.
Mm-hmm.
And so here I'll paste Lumberjack Objective-C. So I'm just going to paste. So for the viewers, this is you can just Google Coco Lumberjack, and you'll see that this is actual logging framework we're using in our team right now. And this is open source, so it's not specific to our project. So Lumberjack, one of the things that makes it extremely powerful is that it gives us a pre-built, pre-existing levels of debugging like verbose, info, warn, error, and so on. And also it allows us to customize our own. So we did one for like networking, audio, UI, and stuff, right? So one takeaway also is that, and this becomes even more important once we go live, is that it's really important that if at any point, any user, even it could be a couple of versions old, we don't know, we can control that. Once we launch this app on the App Store, some users may not want to upgrade to the latest. It's their choice. It's a fact, right? So it's very important that if at any point any user has a problem, right? Like let's say a glitch in the network, or this image is not showing up, or like me, like I cannot view the other phones in the network. Then basically, if it's not the case already, we should aim to be at a state where I can just simply, as the author, the one who authored the code relevant to this problem, I could just take that code, go back to that Git commit that corresponds to where the glitch is happening, and just run the app and immediately find what's going on, or even ask the person having that phone to send me their log thing, and immediately identify what's going on, right? And that can only happen if from the very beginning, you know how we say there's like test-driven development, behavior-driven development. I don't know if this term exists, but let's make it up right now. If it doesn't, there should be like logging-driven development, right? This is something that we should do, and this is basically I'm gonna like let's say I'm gonna logically break down the task for today or this sprint or whatever, and it entails certain steps, certain logical steps. And if at any point one of these steps is not done or not done properly or done in a funny way, then the log has to capture that, right? And thanks to Lumberjack's flexible system, we can do that in a way that doesn't overload the other team members, right? Because another problem with logging could be like an extreme use of it or like overusing it, right? And then actually, this is kind of a side note or a footnote. I asked Dimitri to augment our logging system right now by truncating some of the logs. For example, right now, John, you know how he sent me some logs and included like sending the whole base 64 of JPEG images, right? Or the hexadecimal of JSON or something. That's like gibberish. Now, granted, sometimes you may need to use it. Well, what I asked Dimitri to do is to just use like a category or something, so that let's say I'm logging. Okay, I'm sending this dictionary now over the network, right? And so just to add like dictionary, you can put dictionary and then apply the method truncate, right? And what this method would do is go through every key value of the dictionary and look for basically search for values that are exceedingly long. Let's say a limit of 1,000 characters per value, and see what happens, right? Like see if basically truncate it so that this makes our logging a lot more useful. Because what happened was, Jean-Paul, you'd send me like a simple log, and it would be like 2 megabytes big because it's logging all these images and it's logging all this audio stuff, and it's just useless. So what I did was, and then when you send this stuff over Slack, it just takes a couple of minutes to load per log, right? So what I did was before sending it to you, I go and I sanitize it. I go and I delete all this extraneous stuff, and then I send it to you. So basically, what Dimitri is doing is automating that process, right? So you're going back. So we should do this log-driven development. It should be that at any point, any problem happens, especially when you go live, we can easily see what's happening and immediately identify what's going on, right? And in fact, this is maybe another task that I should do, is we should also maybe enable a hidden menu where we can allow any user, maybe even our live users, I don't know, we can discuss that later, but like to just click on the button that says dump log, right? And we can maybe even, I don't know, maybe you guys, I don't know how secure this would be, but like they can dump this log and it immediately shows up in our server, right? So I can, as a support engineer, I can go and look at the log of this specific person and see, oh, okay, this is what's happening with them. They're getting stuck in the security layer or the UI layer or something, and then immediately find a fix, right? So what do you guys think? I'll open the floor now for you guys.
The last suggestion is a bit
Over.
Privacy invasive. Like we need layers in the company to protect the privacy of users. If they don't want like their emails to be exposed to some support engineer on a team, so in that way it's a bit overkill. But your idea about using logs as part of a unit test is actually an established standard and like an in-practice method. Like some unit tests rely on the output logs to as an image, as a pre-test image for the behavior of a program.
Well, I was referring also not just unit test logging, but the application logging, right?
Yeah, I see. That's where I'm saying like that idea is applied in the context of unit tests as well.
I see. Okay. All right.
So I've got a comment. As far as application logging goes, any logging that you leave in the final product, I mean, there's a delicate balance between logging so much that it's going to slow down the application noticeably, and logging enough that it's actually going to be useful to an engineer to assist the user later. And it's not, there's certainly no established practice for how to make that decision as to which messages should be left in and which shouldn't. It's just not, I don't really see the answer of how an engineer could make those decisions.
Well,
One thing just arbitrarily how they feel at the time.
Well, one thing we can do is we can standardize the log level for our production builds, right? So we can make a scheme that says if we're building to release, then the log level should be info and nothing else, right? And so that's the standard image that we keep on, chugging out to the App Store and maybe to CISO and his team and our QA team, basically, right? And then, but at the same time, we leave the option. Okay, fine, Scappy. Your point is well taken about users' privacy. But let's say for our focus group, our QA team, and so on, we can also give them the option of when a problem happens, that this is the steps we follow to dump the log and send it over to us, right? Like, so.
Yeah, and I've actually had that done before. Like at a previous company, we used to have the logs saved in a documents folder in the app, which you can extract out of the iTunes library, and it's easy to just send this out, and the user can even, like a QA guy, can even log into it and see it.
But I think the nature of that log will have to be specific to the nature of the problem, right? So to explain what I'm just saying, so let's say we have a QA person who's not even technical, right? So they're not an engineer. They are using our app, and then they run into a problem that's clearly, or at least we think from the description of the problem, it's UI related, right? So first of all, this person has a standard build that has a very high, like a very strict logging level, which is, let's say, info, right? So that logging in itself will not give us enough information, and we leave it like that for the reasons John Paul mentioned, which is we don't want to clog or slow down the app due to excessive logging, right? But then when the problem happens, then and our engineers take a look at it, we instruct that QA person to, for example, click on the hidden menu, open the menu, and say, all right, turn on UI logging, okay? And then relaunch the app, and then go through the same steps again. The app would crash, and then we say, okay, great. Once that's done, then we turn on the UI log for your case, and now we can look at it. Now we have the actual relevant log. Do you guys agree with that approach?
I think breaking it down to that level where there's UI log, network log, whatever, I think that would only create an unnecessary and not useful user experience difficulty, because the engineers are just going to get in the habit of telling the user, okay, just go in there and turn them all on, right? Because they're going to want all the information, and it's easier than having the user redo the steps again and again in case they were wrong about which set of logs is the most useful one, right? That's what I would see happening anyway.
Well, I don't know, man. Like, the only reason why I'm saying this is because at some point, if you turn on all the logging, that's a lot of logs. Like, it's really almost useless, right? Because keep in mind, John Paul, that we have to deal with a networking issue here. This QA guy, will likely have to send this log file over the network to you. Chances are they're not in the same room as you are. They're maybe like 10,000 miles away. So, and if they're not going to log everything, and let's say the session involves 10 steps, then you could end up with a 10 megabyte file easy. Like, in fact, I was just testing a very basic case between me and, I think it was Dimitri. Each log was 2 megabytes in size. Now, that may not be as an obvious problem for you, Jean Paul, because you live in Canada, but for the rest of us, living in like countries with substandard internet connections, it's me sitting down for half hour, just waiting for this single text file to upload via Slack or whatever, right? So, you see what I mean? What do you guys think? Muhammad, what do you think of this?
I think the only overkill part of the logs we have is basically the real-time logging. Basically, is the only one that's overkill. Otherwise, we can, like for an internal event, like for a QA guy without any privacy concerns, it shouldn't be a problem to send everything gzip, for example. Text compresses easily, and especially like the especially useful place where logging will come in usefully is when we have two devices and we want to see the interaction between them. So I was considering like using some tool to graphically correlate the messages between two devices and having their log files interleaved to see maybe where stuff are being dropped or and there's already like a lot of tools that automatically do a lot of that for us. So it's all about composing tools together.
Yeah, that's an interesting task. Yeah, that's important for like the kind of problem I had when you had two devices talking, and we don't know whose fault it is. So Jean-Paul, is there anything you can add to this discussion specific to the problem you solved today, while keeping it general still, or?
Well, keeping it general. Not in relation to logging, really. I mean, we added a bunch of logging for the sake of helping to solve the problem, and I left those extra log statements in, though disabled, right?
Yeah.
So
at what level did you leave those logs?
What's that?
What was the level that you put those logs and you turned them up? Were they verbose or debug?
Most of them were verbose.
Okay.
So, and then I just left the log level at default. But I figured, if I'm going to add these debug statements as I'm debugging and I find that they're useful, there's no reason to take them out of the program, right? So I left them in the pull request along with the fix.
Okay. Dimitri, did you want to add anything? You've been quiet.
Yeah. There is application that have some standard question. Do you wanna share crash reports with developers? So we should perform logging only if users is allowed to do it. And by the way, we need only first of all we need only small information, small size of information. For example, we don't need to all base 64 encoding of image. We can have only hash of this value, and by the way, also we can zip all logs that allows us to send a lot of more logs if needed.
Okay. All right.
I had an interesting case where the logs solved a problem for me, by the way. Like, before we got most of the unit tests for the networking code like in the unit test, the networking code had specifically memory leaks in that case. Like in the app, it didn't expose the memory leaks because we weren't like initializing a lot of objects. Basically, just by logging on the DL log on one of the objects, I was able to see immediately that it was being held by something along the way. So I was wondering, like, is it the best place to? Is it the best way to debug, for example, memory management loops and so on, using logs, or is there an alternative to logging?
I know. Is there something you want to add about that, Jean-Paul? I'm not sure what to say for that question.
I'm no expert in that field. Not on iOS yet, anyway.
Dimitri, do you have any idea? I bet you've done a lot of like UI, making sure that the objects are being released.
Yeah, I have an idea. I've played actually with this yesterday, and Logit may help you, but you need dig deeply into Objective-C runtime and replace all this release retain stuff and put a logs where you think object isn't released
Well,
and where it's retained.
there are tools in Xcode, right,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
analyzing memory usage.
yeah. There is like a memory allocator, and you can check out the objects. But well, yeah, that might really help when you have like a run on a real-time operation where a lot of objects are expected to be retained and released. Like when you have a run on like 10,000 of an object, but it may be a bit more difficult to see when there's only a handful of objects to be retained.
Okay. Is there anything else high level you guys want to add about logging that we can kind of immediately start using?
Well, basically, like for the ability of filtering the logs, we need some identifiers to see their source and their level inside the logs themselves. Like if I have a log of everything, I want to be able to filter out the verbose, for example, to run them through a tool to remove all the verbose logs.
That's actually true. In fact, Dimitri, I saw that you did this before in some of the projects we worked on before. So for each log statement, you put, for example, the name, the file name,
Yeah.
maybe even the method name or something, the line number, right? And then also
line number.
Okay. So I think this should be a task, Dimitri. So so let me add that to my to-do list or the takeaway. So add a task for adding, let's say, line number to each log statement, and then we want like file name, and then we want like log level. Okay. Do you guys think color coding? Because I know Lumberjack supports color coding. Do you think that would help, or would it just make our console look so ugly? Or
it would be nice. It's not necessary.
I think it would help a lot, especially if I could just put like a statement at the top of a given file that says just color code all the logs from this file as red. You know.
Okay, you know what? Now that you mentioned that, I don't know how far we want to go the rabbit hole with this logging thing, but this is something I thought of. It's me thinking out loud. I don't know how applicable it is, but let's say, you know how, let's say you have a file, you have the header file, and then the header file you document each method, right? So you document the variable names, return stuff, and also remember I asked before that at the top of the file you provide at least a sentence describing the job of this file, right? Like its purpose and so on. And this becomes more important as the team grows and the code base grows, and you have hundreds, sometimes maybe thousands of files, and it just becomes kind of hard, especially for the new hires and people ramping up, to kind of grasp what's going on. So I was thinking, does it make sense that you put like a log plan? Like let's say we have a file, we have let's say a view controller that, let's say, loads the songs, right? And you click on the song starts playing. Okay, let's just say that's our app, right? And so you, on the top of that, the file that does this, you say, okay, and this file, we will be logging the contents of the songs placed on the table under. Well, I think that's overkill, huh? Now I'm talking too much process, right? What do you guys think? Do you guys understand what I'm suggesting, or?
No, not quite yet.
Okay, so basically you're kind of giving the blueprint to the next guy who's going to look at the code, what to expect from the logs, right? So you're saying, in this page, I'm going to be logging every single song that's added to this page will be logged. I'll be under, let's say, the audio log level. I'm going to also, every user interaction on this,
because it's too much process. If they want to see what's logged, they can just grep for the log statements.
Right. Okay. You know what? Yeah. That's just that was just a thought.
But
that's worth mentioning.
There can be some generic rules that apply to project, like separate logs into several directions like UI, networking, audio, and make sub-directions on that like UI touches or network extended, network full, network, I don't know, medium.
Okay. Okay. All right. We have a couple of more minutes. This meeting is due to end in 8 minutes. Let's at least touch on briefly on Git, using Git for a more effective QA and so on. Maybe this merits a whole brown bag in itself, but if you can just at least pique our interest into the subject, John Paul, can you tell us a little bit more about Git bisect at a high level, and then maybe we can do our own research until our next brown bag.
Well, at a high level,
Yeah.
let me start at the highest level and then go into an interesting detail that I learned fairly recently. So at the highest level, it basically helps you to determine which commit, and it does make the basic assumption that it's a single commit. It helps you to determine in which commit a bug was introduced, right?
That sounds like black magic to me.
Well, you have to have your own method of testing a commit, right? So you initiate the git bisect, and then it will choose commits for you. It'll check out that commit, and then you have to indicate is this one good or is this one bad, and then it'll choose another one for you, and it'll narrow it down to the particular commit where the bug was introduced. Now, the basic assumption that it makes, like I said, is that the bug didn't appear and disappear. It appeared in a single commit, and it's been there ever since, right?
Mm.
And that's common enough for it to be useful, right?
Oh, wait, I have a question. How do you test a commit? I don't even know what that means.
Well, you run through your tests.
You mean unit tests, or what kind of tests?
Whatever tests you like. If the bug is that you can't make friends with somebody when you're running the app, then you have to compile the app. At each step, you have to compile the app, install it on the phones, and check to see whether you can make friends with somebody.
Well, basically, Git bisect is like a search for change. Like you can use it to see where, for example, an icon changed. If you're searching for a feature, for example, like it's not necessarily about a bug or unit test, or is that right, John Paul?
Yeah, fair enough. The wording of it sort of implies that you're searching for badness, right? You mark each commit as either good or bad, right? But it is a fact that it's an arbitrary choice, and you could use it more generally to search for any kind of change.
Yeah. Similar to how Git uses blame instead of annotate.
Right. Do you have any more questions about that aspect? Because there's something else I wanted to describe.
No, as long as we're still talking very high level, because this is, to me, still extremely abstract. But anyways, go on, Jumpo.
So what I find, let me back up before I go on to that. It is possible to automate git bisect, but in order to do so, you have to have an automated test script written. Right?
Okay.
So if you do that, I believe you can put the name of the script on the git bisect command line, and it'll just do it for you.
So can you give us kind of an example of where someone would want to automate the git bisect?
Anytime you possibly can. If you've got 100 different commits that the change might have occurred in, and you need to narrow it down to a particular commit, you're going to want to automate your test, right?
Wouldn't you just want to run this test once, and once you find the offending commit, you're done? Like whenever you want to automate something, the implication is that you want to run it all the time, anytime.
Let me back up here. So when you initiate git bisect, you have to tell it a commit which is known to be bad and a commit which is known to be good. And that sets up, that brackets the change, right? It knows that the break occurred somewhere between those 2 points. Okay, and so what it'll do conceptually, if your entire history is linear, that makes it easier to follow. It'll choose the commit right in the middle, and it'll check out that commit for you, and then give you your command prompt back so that you have the opportunity to test that commit, and then you say git bisect good or git bisect bad in order to indicate whether that commit passes or fails your test.
Ah, okay. So this is a manual way of doing it. And what you're saying is that test can be automated as a script. So it automatically runs the script at every checkout until it tells you. Okay.
Exactly, and then it'll just stop when it's determined which commit is the right one. Okay. So that works?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's definitely worth another brown bag because it seems really powerful. It's just that there's a lot of details that's beyond the scope of just an 8-minute time frame.
What I find really interesting is what it does when the history is highly non-linear. It's very, at first it's very unintuitive how it chooses the commits, but it's smart. It actually chooses them in the optimal way. It chooses the mathematically best way to narrow, like to basically cut the possible commits as closely in half as possible.
Mm-hmm. So it actually has to do some graph tree calculations to see how to do that.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So it chooses them in a way that most humans would not be able to figure out. So, but it does a good job. So.
All right, guys. I think that's it. I gotta go run grab my kid from daycare. So, well, this is our first brown bag. Thanks so much, guys, for showing up. I thought it was interesting. We can talk later about how useful it was. So, on behalf of everyone on the LoboLabs team, my name is Abdullah Bakash from Tripoli, Lebanon. Thanks for joining us for the rest of the world, and we'll be catching up with you guys soon. Take care now.
Okay, bye guys.
Did anyone add anything else before we conclude?
We're good. We're good. Thank you.
Dimitri, Jean-Paul?
Just fine.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Take care now.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.